Welcome to the Intuitive Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Rafferty, medical doctor, PhD, Reiki, and shamanic intuitive healer. I'm here to bring you on a journey of holistic healing that explores the science of the physical body, combined with mental and emotional well-being, energetic and spiritual health. And I am so excited today to have Laura Murphy come and join us. Hello, Laura.
Hello, Dr. Tony. What an honor to be here.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you here. I'm like, there's already so many things I feel I want to talk to you about. I actually don't even know how we're going to condense all of this excitement into such a short time. Oh, and so Laura, before I ask you to introduce yourself, I suppose I'll just speak into just how beautiful your energy is. We had the pleasure of meeting on a handful of occasions previously. And, you know, I had connected with you on Instagram, and you are such a powerful force for women and for empowerment of women. And even just with everything that's happening globally, you're such a beautiful force for what is right in the world. And, you know, when we came together, I just feel like our energies just buzz off each other. I always get so excited when I'm in your presence. So it is such a gift to have you here today. And I think the couple of times that we've met, we've been super excited speaking into how we can help women. And our passion for work with the womb and ancestral healing, even just within the land and the lineage of what Irish women have gone through in this country. And I'm so excited to hear hear you speak into these things. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and everything that you do, and we'll just launch into it.
Yeah, sure. Dive in. Well, I mean, the feeling is mutual, and like water always finds its own level. And it's so when a resonance happens, it just lights up every cell in your body, and your inhibitions come down, and you're free to be your 100% self. And I think that was the case for you and I, like from even before we met on our DMs.
Yes.
So but that's part of what's happening now. That's part of this new paradigm that we're moving into. People of similar vibration and similar beliefs are actually finding each other, and where we were once kind of siloed and solo and kind of being the weirdos of our friend group or whatever, we're like, oh, there's millions of us out there. We just have to find our little pockets, and I think we are, and what a joy that is. So me then, so I am a poet, a healer, and an activist. And I work in the ancient Irish tradition of Imbas Forosnai. So it's a poetic practice that can be compared to a yogic practice. It's a means by which the ancient Fili, who were seers and healers of Ireland, it was a means by which they accessed a higher state of consciousness so that they could bring wisdom into their beings and healing to society and truth to power. So, yeah, it's a big story in itself how I came to learn about Imbas Forosnai, how I came to understand that I actually was born with it. Now, I do believe everyone is born with it, but just as some people have a special talent for music or a special talent for maths, Imbas Forosnai happened to be my one. So yeah, it was banned by St. Patrick along with the coming of Christianity. Um, and I think, he banished the snakes apparently from Ireland, but Ireland never had snakes. So what really did he banish? And many people think it was the energy and the power of the divine feminine that was symbolized by the snakes. And that actually is the power of Imbas Forosnai, because Imbas Forosnai was understood by the poets to be the wisdom of the goddess that they managed to tune into and express through their poetry. So since 2013, then I've been working towards reviving this ancient practice uh, in a way that's not stuck where it was thousands of years ago, but in a way that we can actually use it to heal ourselves and heal the planet and bring truth to a world where mistruth and propaganda is so proliferating. Bring healing and actually bring wisdom, because that's, I think, the thing that we're all missing. The governments of the 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 government of the free world, the United States of America, I mean, if they had wisdom, where would we be in the world? So I'm on a mission to teach people about how to access this Imbus, and that it's available to everyone, and that we can use it for good.
Oh, I love it. I just feel so pumped to listen to listen to you introduce these kind of beautiful themes and topics. And I know a lot of people that are listening may not have heard about Imbus.
Mm,
And it's almost like when I was listening to you speak there, it was almost what was resonating deeply within me was this kind of deep knowing that you were here for great things. And it's about coming back into alignment with your soul's purpose and then going on a journey of remembering
yeah,
what your soul knows from previous lives and what it's here to learn.
exactly.
It's so interesting because I've had a good few sessions over the last few days. I always find when I'm recording these podcasts, all the themes that come through the door, and like, I just love what kind of shows up in the world or the energetics around me before we do things like this and just connect. And people were kind of asking me, they're like, I'm so lost. I'm so like lost in my life. I don't know where I'm going with things. I don't even know who I am. I hear this
Mm,
all the time.
mm,
And it's so fascinating because actually, society, like you were saying, it's so structured, I feel,
mm,
that we all go into the same jobs, we do the same things. We're like little lemmings that go around en masse. But what I say to my clients is, you are such an individual soul in this world. You are such an individual little spark. You're the only person that's lived all the series of lives that you've lived and had all the experiences and all the learning. So, what makes you think when you come into this world that you're not going to want to be that beautiful individual soul?
mm.
So I'd love to hear more about kind of the awakening of this Imbus within you and kind of how you found this kind of journey to your soul's purpose.
Yeah, it's such a great question, because I think we're starting to understand even neurosciences and psychology. We're starting to understand that humans, to survive, we need to have meaning. If there's no meaning in our lives, we find it very hard to stay out of depression and to actually be at our optimal health. So, and Viktor Frankl said it in his great book, Man's Search for Meaning. When I have a how or a why to live, I have a how, or when I have a how to live, I have a why. And that's actually very pertinent, because he was an Auschwitz survivor, and he wrote about the wisdom that came from being in a concentration camp. And that was his main insight. We need meaning in our lives, and where the human can derive their meaning is from their purpose. Why am I here? Do I have a purpose? Do I have a uniqueness? Do I have anything to offer my community? Do I have anything to really, what is that thing that makes me shine, that makes me love life, and that can invigorate me and generate energy in my body, and then maybe generate energy in those of my family and my community. And I I discovered something in the ancient Irish tradition that gave me a really good answer to that, and a really good pathway into discovering my purpose in 2013. And that was when I was on Bridget's Way. It was an ancient pilgrimage in Ireland, and I walked it for 9 days. And one of our cherished elders here in Ireland, called Dolores Whelan, she told us that the Irish word for poem, which is dawn, is a very, very special word. And as well as meaning poem, the word actually means gift, soul, destiny, and skill. So if you put the multi-layered meanings together, we get this concept that's similar to ikigai in Japanese. It's like the idea that we all have a unique soul purpose, a unique gift that was given to us, and that if we manage to shine with the light of that gift, that we then end up on the path of our highest destiny. And it was funny because on the pilgrimage, I have spent 20 years in the corporate world, and when I did the pilgrimage, I think I was about 10 or 12 years in the corporate world, and I was burnt out, and I was just going to get into nature and connecting with the divine feminine, which I already had woken up to at that stage, you know, in 2013. But my question and my intention on the pilgrimage was to try and understand. I knew I had discovered a hands-on healing ability at age 14, but I had no language for it back then. Reiki wasn't even a thing in Ireland back then, and but anyway, I had discovered it through my mom being in a crash and being able to relieve her pain. And then I also, my poetry came in at that age too. Poetry came in at 14. So my intention on the pilgrimage was to try and understand how would I use these two things. It seemed to be kind of separate and seemed to be a bit unconventional. You know, I was, not that I was embarrassed of it, but I was like, you know, the people don't speak in this language. It was a big power. I was like kind of a bit afraid, even though I knew it was based in pure love, but it, you know, I knew the power of it. So that was my intention, to understand how I would understand these gifts that I'd been gifted with, and then also how I could use those gifts in service to the community to help this ailing planet that we're on. Lo and behold, on day 3 of the pilgrimage, we were at this fire on the hill of Slane, and I went into a very deep mystical state, totally spontaneous. I had gotten a thorn in the sole of my foot 2 days previously that I had been walking on. It was hugely painful. And at the fire, then it was this deep mystical experience. Anyway, long story short, I was told after the experience that what it sounded like that I had experienced was Imbas Forosnai, this ancient term that had been written out of history, and very few people know about it, even though it was central to how actually Ireland flourished and functioned, how society functioned in Ireland. Very few people today, or back then, even knew about it. And then I realized, oh my God, Imbas Forosnai was the energy of healing in ancient Ireland, and it was the energy of poetry, and it was a gift of the goddess Bridget. It was said that Bridget bestowed Imbas, and I had already been very deeply connected to Bridget, and I always looked up to her as a humanitarian and an activist. And then it just went like the lights went off, and I was like, this is my dawn. Like, I was born with this thing, but I never had a name for it, you know. And
Mm.
my corporate world, my day job was communications, and I had got to have a degree in English. So I was like, well, everything leading up to this point was that so I could communicate what Imbas Forosnai is to a mass audience, and in some way play my part in reviving it. And then that's what I did from 2013. I learned everything I could learn from an intellectual point of view, but the most important thing was actually learning through embodiment, and learning through the challenges and the blessings that can come when you actually bring that level of spiritual power into your being. Like, with that kind of a gift comes great responsibility, and
Mm.
the universe or the goddess or whatever way you want to look at it makes sure that you are refining your ego, that you are transmuting your shadow. So it was a big journey till now to really understand Imbus in an intellectual way, in an embodied way, in an emotional way. And it led then in 2021 to me being very, I suppose, influential in making sure that Bridget's Day was a national holiday, and doing a lot of work for mother and baby home survivors and survivors of the Magdalene laundries, because it's kind of all connected to the healing of the feminine in Ireland. You know, there's a big wounding there, and it's that set me on my path then in 2021, then I came out of the closet and announced and just called myself a poet and called myself an activist. And I tentatively wrote the word healer in my bio about a year ago. But I've fully, even though I've been healing since age 14 with miracles happening, very regularly, it's only now is the time that I've kind of completed a certain amount of embodied experiences that I feel comfortable in my journey coming out and putting the name or the label or the whatever way you want to describe this. So that's it. So that's my journey.
Oh, that is so powerful. Thank you so much. There's so many things. I'm literally like, I want to talk about all of these things in detail. But one thing I will speak into is just this. It's so funny because, when you work in the healing space, when certain people come through to you, you just know that their vibrational frequency is just so, they are healers. They may not just have realized it or gone on the journey to transmute some of that heavier shadow
Yeah.
so that they can fully recognize that about themselves.
Mm.
And it's so beautiful. And I think the minute that you walked into this space where we connected, I was like, oh my god, that just the radiance of the vibrational frequency, it just has such a healing quality. And it's so lovely meeting other people that are doing the depths of the shadow work, which
Mm.
sometimes it's interesting. I had a lady in today who was even talking into that. She's like, the Reiki sessions are great and everything. She's like, but I feel like I'm kind of just living in the light space. And I was like, well, that's the power actually resides in the shadow. And we can live in this space where we have lovely spiritual experiences and everything, but and it's so easy to bypass into that all the time because it's easier than sitting in the sticky crap essentially. But
Yeah.
oh my god, going into that shadow that you were talking about there and actually getting those worldly experiences, transmuting that into the strength and the power that rises your vibration so you can hold that frequency for others, it's just so powerful.
It is. And in my opinion, it's the only way. Like, I'm never one to say this spiritual path is the only way, the Buddhist path is, or the Christian. I believe there's wisdom in most of them and all of them. But what I will say and what I will hang my hat on is that the only way to become an actualized human on the planet at this time is to transmute your trauma and to transmute your shadow. And I suppose different wisdom traditions have different ways of looking at that, but so many wisdom traditions have now bypassed that element. And in my opinion, the new age movement or the spiritual movement that we I suppose we are a part of, like you and me, there's so much of that bypass this transmutation of shadow, whether it's on the personal or whether it's on the collective, and bypass their personal shadows or the shadow of the planet. So many people think, well, there's genocide happening, but that's not my purpose to actually send love to it or send healing or to speak out. It's very individualistic, but I do. There is a lot to be said. The people in my life who I know um, who are vibrating at that frequency of love, or who are self actualized enough to bring wisdom through and to be a support, to be a real rock for themselves and a rock for their family and their community, are the people who've had the courage and the humility to traverse the shadow. And like, I mean, it's not easy. It's really, really difficult because there's so many layers. There's the layers that of trauma maybe in childhood, layers from past lives, layers of collective trauma. I mean, even just
Mm,
being Irish with our own famine that we've experienced in colonization, and then the shaming of the Catholic Church. We all have a kind of an inherent programming that we're all sinners, even if we're not
mm,
practicing Catholics. That's all big stuff to traverse. And there's a big, what I see in most of us in Ireland is a wounding around self-worth. I know that was so
mm,
big for me. It's like my worthiness. There was this belief really subconsciously that I didn't deserve love, and the amount of work that I had to do to heal that core belief, limiting belief, you know, and you really have to go into layers of self-disgust even, or self-hatred,
Mm.
that could have accumulated for so many different reasons. And it's terrifying. It's terrifying to go there. But what I found is, and I was kind of pushed there as well, like, you know, in other ways, because I had a journey with Lyme disease where I was debilitated for 3 years, and was forced. The only way out was through. Like, I was so debilitated, and so people with Lyme disease are 70% more likely to commit suicide because it's such a state of suffering and helplessness, and it's kind of like a slow death.
Mm.
um, but actually, that deepest descent into the darkness for me was actually how I evolved to where I am now. And it's actually that descent into the shadow and the dark that allowed me to shine in the light of my dawn. That's where it all actually started from. And it's amazing as well, because the whole dynamics of Imbas Forosnai is that it's illumination from the darkness. So I remember, like, in maybe 2006, I felt I would write a book, definitely a book of poetry. And I had kind of a concept in my head, and it was called The Magic of Light, you know, because I lived in the light vibration. The darkness was not something that wasn't me. I'm not going there. I'm here to bring light. um, and then I realized, oh my God, I was halfway there. The name of a poetry collection was going to be Imbas, the Magic of Light. And there was going to be a corresponding book called Imbas, Gift of the Dark, because Imbas is the light, the first spark of illumination that comes from the darkness.
Mm.
So the Philly used to go into caves or darkness for 3 days and 3 nights and desensitize and fast and go into the darkness to wait for this spark of illumination. Because Imbas Forosnai actually is an Irish term that translates as illuminated inspiration. So they would go into the dark cave and they would wait. They would do some pranayama and things like that, and they'd have different practices. Chanting and a mantra would be another, and wait for the spark of illumination, which they believed was the light of the goddess, the light of Bridget coming through. And then they would speak spontaneously and extemporaneously, and that would be the wisdom of the goddess coming through them. And Newgrange, which is our preeminent sacred site, it's my understanding that that was built to capture how nature replicates this moment of Imbas Forosnai. So Newgrange was built 5,200 years ago, and with such engineering acumen as to be able to capture the light of the rising sun on winter solstice. And this is significant because the night before winter solstice is the darkest night of the whole year. It's the longest, darkest night. And then our ancestors built Newgrange to capture the first beams of the light of the rising sun when the sun started to come back and then make the days longer. And the chamber was built in such a way that the beams come in through the light box, and then they go down through a very womb-like chamber. It's the chamber is in the shape of a vulva, and there's a womb. You know, the hill is like a belly bulging. So it is very womb-like and feminine-like. And then the light of the rising sun hits the stones at the end of the chamber, which is a triple spiral. So they deliberately made it so that the sunbeams would light up this very sacred symbol of birth, death, and rebirth. You know, so they must have spent decades, or I don't know, no one even knows how they move the stones scientifically. It's like, how is that possible, building this monument or this sacred ceremonial site to capture this most potent light? Like, they believed that this light had a certain power because it came from the darkness, you know. And that points to the fact that, oh well, everything comes from the dark. Life comes from the dark, you know. Like, it's like the point of conception in the womb, it's dark. And incidentally, Newgrange, the Irish word for Newgrange is called Brúna Bóinne, which can be translated as the womb of Bowen. So mythologically, then the light is seen as Dagda. So Dagda is the good god, penetrates with his beam of light, or his phallic symbol of light, penetrates the womb of Bowen to create and conceive Engus, who is the Irish god of love, and Imbas on winter solstice. So it was clear that our ancestors knew that this point in our wheel of the year was really important, had huge power. And it's my understanding that it was a physical manifestation or a physical means of harnessing the natural way that Imbas Forosnai manifests in the earth. And that they then, I actually believe that the Philly, the poets and the seers would have gone into these chambers at these power points to go into their own darkness, to face their own shadows, to work. You know, we have darkness retreats now, or vipassanas, and even vision quest in the Lakota tradition and stuff, to go into the darkness, to reckon with your own shadow, to enter the cave that we fear, like what Jung says, you know, and that's where our treasure lies, is in the cave we fear to enter. But that they did this, and that there must have been huge significance and power with this way of honoring the darkness as a means to bring forward the light. And it was clear that they did not bypass the darkness, and that's what, like, our society trains us to do, is to bypass and skip the hard parts, you know. Christmas, even, like, light up Christmas so we can pretend it's not really dark, and to stop ourselves from going into the depression. That's all, you know, can be seen as a part of a cycle. So it's very important that we understand, even in our own human journey, that if there's dark cycles, or, you know, that it's all part of a healing process. And the more we allow ourselves to go into the dark, or to face the dark, the more we surrender to the dark, and honor it in a very sacred way, the more then we can make space for the light to come up.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Like, it's so fascinating because I do get a lot of clients that they are scared of the dark. And even looking back on the journey to get here, I didn't, like, for months and years I didn't even realize what really sitting into the shadow or sitting into the dark was. And like, I'm sure my mentor was up the walls with me because she was like, "Oh, Tony, you need to actually feel something. You need to sit into it." And I was like, "I don't know what that means." And I think it was the fact that I think, as a man on this journey, with societal conditioning, not being able to fully feel or express my all of the range of emotions and embody all of the different versions of me that existed. It was almost like one person was allowed out to play, and that was the facade, but all of these different people were lining up alongside, and it was only when it reached kind of breaking point through pranayama was so amazing for me, and my shamanic journey as a wounded healer myself before I became a practitioner,
Yeah,
that brings you into the shadow. You're going there whether you like it or not.
absolutely. That's it.
It's just so fascinating. But on that journey to get to this point, obviously, I love that you talk about your gift. It's almost like you're a channel for these messages of the goddess energy. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, like, earlier on in our discussion, you mentioned awakening to the goddess,
Yeah,
and I'd love, like, obviously, I've been on this journey, and I can understand where you're what you're speaking into, and I can even, like, I can vividly remember my awakening to that energy. Like, it was so clear. So I would love to hear what that was like for you, and kind of what that might be like for people to be aware of if they're going on a journey to connect with the goddess energy.
yeah. Well, I'd love to hear. Can you share yours briefly, or?
Yeah. Well, it was so funny because as I went on a journey with a lot of this work, my life changed. I was very spiritual. in my teens. No idea what I was doing. I used to meditate, and I used to have kind of like out of body experiences where I felt my soul was leaving my body and moving around doing things,
Mm.
and it used to glow. And I realize now that was my luminous energy field. Like it was almost like my energy field was waking up.
Yeah.
And I went to see a psychic, a healer in my late teens and early 20s. Now, I'd been meditating for years at that stage. I'd been reading all about paganism and witchcraft and the goddess. And I was so drawn to that, but I'd no idea what any of it meant. I'd no mentors. I was only reading books that I could get my hands on as a teenager, you know?
Yeah.
I went to see a tarot card reader, a psychic, and a medium, a very powerful man. But he told me about my guides and everything like that. I didn't know what any of that meant at the time, my spirit guides and the archangels that were protecting me and all the rest.
Mm.
And then he said to me, you know, you're too young to go on this journey, so I'm going to shut down your connection. And I was like, okay, I don't even know what he's talking about. What connection? And within a couple of weeks, I was a vegetarian all throughout my teens. I lived my life in a certain way that was so different to my family and friends. But I found I resorted to I started eating meat again. I started drinking, which I hadn't done. And I kind of just found I started doing the societal
Yeah.
norms. And I stopped meditating. I stopped connecting in any way.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a part of me that was kind of like, oh my God, I wonder whether that was ethical at the time to be doing that. Like, what was that? What was that part of the journey for? But I think ultimately speaking, I don't know whether I would have gone on my deep dive into academia or any of
Mm.
these things if I hadn't have actually experienced that. I think I would have been just launching down a healing path.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I needed to have the life experiences, like you say, to go on the journey with kind of some of the more shadowy elements of my path, and to actually go and do medicine,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it can overlap with the energetics of how I work.
Mm.
It's a very key part of my journey. But I found my way through the doors of a beautiful healer to do a Reiki attunement, and that literally was like someone went in with a lightning bolt and just reopened whatever connection to be a channel for the energy, obviously, that moves through you, the life force energy
Yeah.
that happens when you're attuned to the Reiki energy.
Yeah.
And my life completely changed that day.
Mm.
It completely changed.
Mm.
And then I went on a journey where I was meditating for an hour or two a day to reconnect with spirit, to reconnect with my guides, all of these things that had been completely shut down for many, many years.
Yeah.
But I began kind of doing a lot of reading and a lot of energetic work around shamanic
Mm.
practices. I was very drawn to it,
Mm.
very, very drawn
Mm.
to it. And I started having dreams about healing wombs. And I then started looking into it, and you know, the lineage of shamanism that I work with is the Muni Kai rites, is what I've received. There's a Dr. Alberto Villaldo. He's a philosopher, a medical anthropologist, that he went and kind of studied shamanism in all these different places around the world,
Mm.
and essentially was gifted the ability to pull all of these kind of teachings into a series of rites that he basically started giving.
Right.
Now, his partner was Marcela Lobos, and she received the rite of the womb keeper, which she then could use to heal others and
Mm.
to heal the womb space of these women that were coming to be with her.
Mm.
And funnily enough, I found my way to this rite,
Mm.
and I was like, I need to do this. I
Mm.
absolutely need to do this. And so basically, I was asleep one night and I was in the most, you know, those really, really vivid dreams that you get
Mm.
where you know that actually this is real
Yeah.
life on a spiritual or astral level.
Yeah.
And I could feel this lightning bolt, like a poker, hot energy in my left foot. And it began rising through my body and into my sacral chakra. And I woke up and I was like, what has just happened to me? I had such an intense heat rising up the left side of my body. So I was like, wow, that's really weird. I couldn't eat for 3 days afterwards. There was such a deep energetic shift in my body.
Mm.
And I then a couple of days later, asked my friend whether she'd be willing to come, because I had had in a meditation a vision of how I needed to heal the womb.
Mm,
So basically, she came to me and she was like, "Of course, I'll do that for you." Now, I had been having all these visions of where I needed to place my hands, the things that needed to be said. All of the imagery was gifted to me during my meditation sessions,
mm,
following this kind of rise of the heat through the left side of my body.
mm,
And then that day, something happened with that first womb healing that I did that just opened up this whole energetic kind of system within my body
mm,
with regard to the divine feminine
mm,
energy and how it needed to be used
mm,
with women to be able to heal the womb space.
mm,
So I've just gone on a journey with it. It's actually been so interesting because I just started doing womb healings all
mm,
the time then
mm,
after that. And I just was like, well, this is part of my gift.
mm,
This is why I'm here to do this.
mm,
I'm here to heal wombs.
mm,
And it was interesting because actually I began to realize that it wasn't about just the womb space, it was about the sacral energy. It was about the hara. It's about healing the maternal wounding in men
mm,
as well,
mm.
that they hold in that sacral space on behalf of their maternal
Yeah.
lineage. So it's quite interesting because every time I hold a retreat, and even when people come in to see me, they start spotting some, like most of the women end up bleeding
Yeah.
at the same time on retreat. And it's so fascinating to me because it it just blows my mind from an energetic perspective that
Mm,
it just moves through the body.
yeah.
I don't do anything. And that was how I basically became accustomed to the energy of the divine feminine and started going on a journey with the goddess energy,
Mm.
through all of these meditations and what I was seeing in my dream space and during the healing sessions. So that's been my journey with it.
So wonderful to hear, and kind of I can confirm, like on my path of connecting with you, um I actually connected with you because of your academic credentials. It's like I'm very, because I work with Imbas Forosnai. It's basically it's womb wisdom, it's womb healing. I, I thought I had that covered for myself. I felt I had that covered for myself. And I mean, the healing I've done personally to this point is massive. But I connected with you to kind of, just out of due diligence to keep an eye on my physical health in my Lyme recovery. I really had a resonance with you, and I had the trust in you. And because you were goddess oriented, I'm like, okay, this is, he's ticking a lot of boxes here. I'm just looking for some physical reassurance scientifically that everything's okay in the body. And yeah, so, and anyway, then I ended up on your bed, and we end up in this healing session, and it's like, and I knew from that day that there was going to be womb healing, because my womb had swollen to, like, I was 6 months pregnant. And that always happens in big Imbus transmissions or big healing work. My womb just balloons. So I knew you were going to work some magic, and you did. But maybe there are so many other people like me who are, drawn to you for that reason, or that you can put in this time of change and people becoming more accepting of the spiritual. It's really important that we have people in both worlds, in the 3D and the intellectual, who can speak all of the different languages and put all the lenses on what is the truth. And you can do that, and your gift is immense. And there's not many people I would open up, my womb space to. And me being a healer, I understand how we need safety in the space, and how there's so many people who have not done the work, who are positioning themselves that they have. So I'm very discerning, very, very discerning on who I open up to. But it was a big yes from you. And you immediately said, oh, Joan of Arc is here. I think she came in first. And I was like, I had a dream. Joan of Arc spoke to me the night before Bridget's Way in a dream. And she said, do not be afraid to fight for freedom and speak the truth, for you will always be protected. And it was one of those dreams as well, where that it was different. And it's years after then I realized, Imbas Forosnai is the gift that gives the truth. But the reason that you're given it is so that you can fight for justice and fight for humanity and fight for freedom. And I ended up on the stage of the Abbey like 8 years after, and they say it takes 7 years to integrate a pilgrimage. Ended up on the stage of the Abbey speaking my truth and fighting for freedom and recalling, because I was so nervous. Like I was speaking as a second generation survivor of mother and baby homes, and we were a group that were silenced and shamed for 100 years. And I was one of the first to be given such a platform, to be invited on our national stage to speak the truth, to counter fake narratives that our government were trying to get out to block justice. So this was a big, massive collective healing space that I assumed. But how I overcame the nerves and the feeling of who am I to be doing this? I recalled the dream. I recalled Joan of Arc, and you perceived her straight away when I walked into the room.
It's
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I love it. I get my spirit tingles. I call my spirit tingles when I just get like this fuzz that goes down my body when I'm hearing these beautiful stories.
Yeah, but you have it. And even how you guided me, you were like, light a red candle and bring in Durga. And then I did that. It's down on my altar. And then the Palestine work that I've been doing since being with you has been hugely empowered by Durga. I say her mantra. So you're a blessing, and we were destined to meet, and I hope we're friends, and Anam Kara's right up until our elderhood, and then we can be elders together, and who knows what magic.
I'm so on for that. I'm so on for that.
But it's amazing as well, because you were bringing in the Hindu goddesses, and that was one of my when the question is like, what was that moment of the goddess? When did she dawn? And I suppose in that phase between 14 and 20, when I was healing hands on, but not outwardly, not publicly, I used to get words that would come to me, and the word Devi came, and the word Devi kept coming on repeat. And then I looked it up and I realized, oh, it's Hindu for goddess. And Vishnu used to come as well, Vishnu. And I had never heard of Vishnu. So I started to understand, okay, the Hindu religion is very important. And then I started to, I have a very academically minded brain, a very curious brain. So I would research everything I could on that. And then that led me to Amma. I don't know if you've ever heard of Amma. She's a living saint from India. I think she's in her 70s now, but she is a living embodiment of the divine feminine. And she
Wow.
travels the world giving her darshan, hugs. She gives hugs to people. But she is one of the world's most powerful humanitarians. Like, she has her own universities, she has her own hospitals in India. The amount of money that she generates for people caught in tsunamis and things like that. And it's all volunteer based. It's all from people working in selfless service and Siva. But anyway, I went to see her. She came to Ireland, and I went to see her in 2012 and got the hug. And her hug is just astounding. Like, it's this moment of pure bliss that definitely initiated me into something. But it was at Amma that I actually met the organizers of Bridget's Way. And I was like, the minute I met them, then I knew I had to go on Bridget's Way. Bridget's Way is where I experienced Imbas, and that set me on the whole path. So it's like, you think that a moment's kind of a decision, a split second decision on where to go or who to meet, and it can be so influential. And the through line then was that Imbas Forosnai, there's a scholarly train of thought that says the Irish wisdom tradition was one and the same with the Indian wisdom tradition, and that there is this Indo European source from which the Irish tradition and the Indian tradition came. So it stands to reason then that because the Irish lineage is a broken lineage, there's so much in the Indian and the yogic tradition that can reveal parts of the Irish tradition that we've lost. And that's I still to this day weave yoga and weave the Vedic knowledge and texts to really try and bring through this revived understanding of Imbus that's wanting to come out.
I love that. Like, it's so interesting because I think, and I've spoken into this in previous episodes as well, with regard to our journey with Catholicism in a lot of ways in this country has actually separated us from spirituality.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's stripped out a lot of the energetics of the goddess energy,
Mhm.
or these very powerful, strong female figures in our history. And the more that I go into the depths of that, I'm just like, wow, this is quite fascinating. Like, even your discussion around kind of St. Patrick banishing the representation, the serpent energy, which is like a representation of the divine feminine of the country. And
Mm.
it's kind of, when you look at everything, it's just wild in so many ways that the patriarchy, it just rose.
Yeah.
but but that kind of goddess energy and that connection to the divine feminine, it's so important as we move forward within society, that there is a rise in that power, and that we recognize this energy and this strength and what it can do uh, for Ireland as a nation, and for the world, to be able to kind of really begin to actually recognize that and heal the wounds within the feminine
Yeah.
as a byproduct of what's happened. Does that make sense?
Oh, huge sense. And you're spot on. And, you can pinpoint that point in well, there's a few points, like thousands of years ago, the Irish people, the pagan people, were a nature worship. Pagan meant that you worshipped nature, that you took care of nature, and that you followed the cycles of nature, and you lived in reciprocity with nature. And the personification that they put on nature was of the goddess. So it was, they honored the feminine cycles of nature, and they honored the earth as mother, as a giver of life. um that even early Christianity, which is very connected to Jesus' original teachings, Yeshua's and Magdalene's teachings, the very first Christians in Ireland were very aligned with Yeshua and Magdalene and the pagan ways. Their teachings were like almost one and the same. That's why they lived in such harmony. It was only when the Catholic Church, who were a colonizing force, like that religion was created simply to colonize. Roman Catholic, the Romans were the first colonizers of the world, first biggest colonizers. And it's like, when Ireland adopted that religion, then we completely, well, St. Patrick completely, and his crew completely obliterated the nature loving ways, and the feminine started to be written out of our psyche, our ways of relating to the world, our ways of relating to each other. And we ended up then, after that, being colonized by or not long after that, then being colonized by the English, and that was the next 800 years. And during that time, we were dehumanized. We were, they tried to make us believe that we were as intelligent as monkeys, and that we were monkeys, and that we were hooligans and all the rest of it. They impoverished us, they stole our food, they created the famine, they genocided us basically, and they stole everything. But yet, in and around 1916, despite being war weary and impoverished and exhausted from the taking of our creative and spiritual power by the Catholic Church first, and then by the Empire, by England, we actually managed at that point in time to regain our freedom. Well, the minus 6 counties, which was an incredible achievement. But they did that because they had a cultural revival that actually connected people back to that ancient mythology that was goddess worshipping, that was nature worshipping. And the poets of that time, who would have worked with Imbas Forosnai, but not, they didn't understand the name of it or what it was called, they made us remember that we have this archetypal intelligence within us that is Fionn, the great hero, the warrior Fionn, and Cuchulainn and Bridget and Bowen. And we had those archetypal energies within us. And then the people of Ireland rose up. They realized they weren't thick. They realized they weren't like monkeys, that we actually have this wisdom tradition that's every bit as incredible as Greece and India, and they used that power to win our freedom. But what we did then was we immediately gave it away to the Catholic Church, and in the writing of our new constitution, it was written by Eamon de Valera and also Archbishop McQuaid, and it was written in a very theocratic way. So a theocracy is a country that is ruled by religion or by religious dogma. And the dogma of the Catholic Church was written into the Constitution, which is the legal document by which every civilian is supposed to live. And they wrote a clause in it to say that a woman's place is in the home and only the home. So even though women were pivotal in the winning of Irish independence, and they were pivotal in the fight for Irish independence, we were actually seen as equal. And that was why, that was a part of the reason we were so powerful, because women were, the likes of Maud Gonne and Ella Young and Countess Markievicz were allowed to have their say and be a part of the strategy and the rising. But then we were written out of history, and it was right at that point in 1922, when that clause was put into the Constitution, that the mother and baby home system was set up, exactly in the same year. So at the point that the women and children were written out of the Constitution and replaced by the Catholic dogma, that was when this huge traumatizing of our own citizens, of women and children, started to happen by the men of this country. And that was the start then of this trauma being perpetuated, and men were equally traumatized by this way of being, in different ways. And it's really only in the last couple of years that people are starting to speak out about the mother and baby home trauma. When we were growing up, people didn't, so many people were affected or were in a home, but it was so shameful that no one could speak up about it. And, people were seen as sinners, and getting pregnant before marriage was seen as sinful as murdering somebody. It was the same level of sin in the Catholic Church. Creating life in this country was considered the same as taking a life in terms of sin. So you can imagine the damage that has done to our collective psyche. So now, what the work that you're doing on healing that feminine wound in the lineage, the work that I'm doing to bring back the understanding of the Sophianic wisdom tradition, or Shekinah, like the feminine wisdom, is the lack of it is what's caused the polycrisis of ecocide and genocide, not just in Ireland, but in the world. So it's the reintroduction of that feminine wisdom and love, because feminine wisdom is so powerful because it's rooted in the love of the mother. And that's what's missing in the world. And that allows this heinous suffering to be perpetuated, and senseless killing of trees, of animals, of people. But we need to bring back that wisdom, and we need to not brush the trauma under the carpet. There's a great tradition in Ireland of forgetting and pretending things didn't happen, pretending the mother and baby homes system didn't happen, and moving on, which is what Leo Radker was trying to do when I was very active in advocating for mother and baby homes. But the only way that Ireland can shine a light of healing into the world is to transmute and face the trauma that we've been through, colonial, religious, even the trauma we inflicted on ourselves, and then transmute it, and then offer that wisdom out to the world.
That is so powerful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And something really touched me. Well, all of it really touched me, but something at the very end there that you were speaking about with regard to like this sweeping it under the carpet, because two of the main energy centers that I tend to see are impacted in women that come through the door are their womb space and their throat space.
Ooh.
And there's such an intricate link between the wounds held in the womb and this suppression of the voice. And it's not even suppression of the voice, it's it's actually suppression of expression.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways we can actually express ourselves, but obviously the voice is one of them.
Mm.
And I suppose this brings us on the whole the cycle back to actually to you as a communicator, and when you actually began that kind of magical moment in which you stepped into that beautiful energy of the divine feminine and it awoke what it needed to within you. It was almost like all of the dominoes fell into place where you were like, actually, I'm on a journey of healing the womb. I'm on a journey of healing the divine feminine. And what does that look for me to be able to express myself fully and communicate how I've healed my wounds, and how can I help people to communicate their
Mm.
pain and their trauma too? It's so powerful.
Yeah, but it's so essential. We all
Yeah.
need to do it because there's nothing more, or there's no greater tragedy than an untold story. And
Mm.
um, I I was lucky that my mom always confided in me about her loss. When she got pregnant before marriage, and the pain of being separated from her child, and um, she expressed to me. But there's so many other women in Ireland, so many, who've just confided in me because of my advocacy, who have said nothing to anybody else. And there's just this stifling. And
Mm.
RTE, I was part of a documentary called Finding Bridget, celebrating her national holiday. And RTE, they asked me what was the impetus behind the letter to the Taoiseach, because I wrote an open letter to the Taoiseach, which it just hit on so many levels. It was kind of it was really powerful in terms of the truth that it told at a time when the government were trying to block truth. But in the letter, I ended by calling for Bridget's Day to become a national holiday, to symbolise how Ireland now intends to become a country of equals, and a country that values the feminine as much as the masculine. Um, and RTE then asked me in the documentary what was the whole impetus behind that. And my immediate reaction, I just felt the energy in my throat, even trying to answer. It was like, the Irish women have been choked for so long on trauma, on being, even if we weren't told to not tell our story, it was just implicit. Don't speak. If it was somehow thought that if a woman got pregnant, it must have been the Immaculate Conception, because the men were never shamed. The men were never told to leave their towns or whatever. It was like it was all on the women. And so, yeah, there's this where I think every woman in Ireland, I don't think it's a sweeping statement to say every woman in Ireland is affected in some way by this choking. Um, and it's only by starting to express ourselves that we can get over it. And it's a really hard thing to do. Like in 2019, that was the first time I actually spoke publicly through the energy of Imbas Forosnai. And on that day, my moon time started, my flow started. It was like 2 weeks out from where my due time was. It just started again. My womb just swelled and the flow started. And then this pain, the pain of daggers all around my neck, the back of my neck, the side of my neck, the front of my neck. And that pain lasted for 24 hours after I spoke in Imbas for the first time. And so it was a journey since then, and then the next time it was easier, but you really, because with these physical sensations come the remembrances of past lives, or maybe the remembrances of the collective energy of being like forcefully or violently shut up. Your body viscerally experiences this, but you just keep trusting in the protection that you have, as a face of the divine feminine. And the same thing happened when I was standing on the stage of the Abbey. I I was actually in the midst of my Lyme debilitation. I was not in any fit state to be in public, never mind speak on behalf of this survivor body. Um, but a friend of mine, Gary Dunn, when I was kind of crying on the phone to him the night before, saying, I'm so exhausted, I have a cold sore on my face, I can't even recall words, like, how am I going to do this? And he just said, what would Maud Gonne do? And Maud Gonne is a heroine of mine who's called Ireland's Joan of Arc. What would Maud Gonne do? And I was like, Maud Gonne would understand this is not about herself. She would just go and deliver. And that's what I did. And it was powerful. It was really powerful. And it was broadcast on St. Patrick's Day of all days. It was broadcast, this call to make Bridget's Day a national holiday. So it's just divine timing,
Yeah.
synchronicity in it all. But I would say,
Oh, I
just
love
express, just do it. And now I had a beautiful healing session with a beautiful, powerful woman who was doing incredible work for the healing of Ireland last week. And she was in a bit of a challenging circumstance. And what came through, the message that came through for her was that I could see this vision of her with her face, and her face was shining and emanating. And I realized that she was going to be facing a lot of projection in the week ahead, and I could see her just beaming with the face of the divine feminine, not in a way that's trying to project her beauty or trying to. She literally was just beaming with the light of the goddess. And I said to her, the message that's coming through to you, your mantra is that I am the face of the goddess and I speak with the authority of the great mother. So I am the face of the goddess and I speak with the authority of the great mother. And we need to assume the position of authority. And that kind of comes with the caveat. And I invite your listeners, male or female, masculine, feminine, any gender, to use this if they are ready. But it comes with the caveat, you need to have done your shadow work. You need to have your ego in check. Ego serves us, but it needs to be in check. And you need to be coming from a place of pure love and pure selfless service and a certain level of courage. And when you can genuinely say that you're in that position, you will be able, the goddess will allow you to use this mantra to be her emissary on this planet. And then you are you are the face of the divine feminine. The great mother needs women and men to speak for her, to stand up for her, to stand up for her children. And she's offered this beautiful mantra, which we all can say either in our spiritual practice or even publicly, to say and to claim that position. I am the face of the goddess. I speak with the authority of the great mother.
Oh, what a powerful, powerful, powerful way to wrap up today. Oh my God. I'm having my spirit tingles again. That's something like it's interesting. I could literally keep going for hours, and I'm so conscious that we have to wrap things up for you. But it's so fascinating because I think when you make that dedication to expressing yourself, to going on that journey with the divine feminine. And like you say, whether that's as a woman finding her power and her strength in this world and working through those shadows to really be able to stand in her power, or whether that's as a man on this journey. And I know myself, I've gone on pilgrimage, I have dedicated myself to the rise of the divine feminine in this world, because it's so important that men go on a journey to heal their wounds and step into their masculine strength to hold that energy of the divine feminine the way it needs to be held in this world as well. So I think I just love how you finish that with this beautiful mantra that we can all tap into the power. And I'm just so grateful to you for the work that you do, first of all, but for just taking the time to be here and to just speak into everything that you did today. And I have no doubt there are so many threads and strands and facets that I know will touch people in very different ways. And hopefully, finishing this episode, people will feel inspired, they'll feel empowered, and they'll perhaps maybe seek out some safe space to explore some of these shadows and to begin expressing themselves so that they can stand in their power.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You are such a gift to the world. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you for all of the work you are doing, for the space you are holding for the divine feminine. We need men like you. We can't do it on our own. And there's so many men starting to rise up now, and you're a beacon for them. So bless your sacred work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. You are such a gift. And I absolutely hope we can get you back on again. There's so many different threads I want to explore further. So thank you from the bottom of my
Oh,
heart.
Bra more a store. Bra more.